Picture this. You've got a high fever. It's the 3rd century, or the 15th, doesn't matter. Someone runs out and calls for the town doctor. And here's the question. Was that the best thing that happened to you that day? Or the worst? Because for almost all of human history, there's a very strange answer to that. And it's not the one you're expecting. We all grow up with an idea in our heads that feels too obvious to question. Medicine always helped. Less than it does today, sure. Rougher, more painful, fewer tools. But it helped. The picture in your mind is a staircase. The ancient doctor knew a little. The medieval doctor knew a little more. The 19th century doctor knew more than that. And today's doctor knows a lot. Every step a little better than the one before. It makes perfect sense. That's how we imagine progress. And this is where history trips us up. Because it wasn't a staircase, it was a flat line, almost frozen, for thousands of years. And for most of that time, calling the doctor made your odds worse. Here's an example. December 1799. George Washington wakes up with a severe sore throat. Probably an infection that was closing off his airway. They call in the best doctors available. In less than a day, they drain something close to 5 pints of blood out of him, roughly half the blood in an adult body. They also apply substances to raise blisters on his skin, and others to make him vomit. Washington dies that night. He wasn't some peasant with no access to care. He was the most powerful man in the country, receiving the finest treatment money could buy at the time. And that was the treatment. Now here's where it gets good. Because the interesting question isn't, how could they be so stupid? It's something else. Why did nobody notice? That's the part that surprises people most. The doctor who bled Washington wasn't guessing. He was following a system with 2,000 years of tradition behind it, taught in universities, with textbooks, schools, and masters. The idea was that the body contained 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, and 2 kinds of bile. Health was balanced between them. Illness was too much of one. And if illness is excess, then the treatment is obvious, right? Take some out. Bleed the patient. Make them vomit. Make them purge. Make them sweat. It makes sense. It's elegant. It explains everything. There's just one problem. It's wrong. From beginning to end. And here's the hidden mechanism. The heart of this whole thing. Think it through with me. The doctor bleeds the patient. 2 things can happen. If the patient gets better, and most people do get better on their own, with most illnesses, the conclusion is the treatment worked. If the patient dies, the conclusion is the disease was too strong. We got there too late. You see what just happened? No possible outcome can bring the theory down. A win confirms it. A loss confirms it too. The idea is bulletproof. For 2,000 years, doctors had evidence every single day. It was just the kind of evidence that never says no. And there's a second mechanism. This one, very human. The doctor who showed up and said, "Rest, drink water, this will pass." That doctor looked useless, not worth the fee. Didn't look like wisdom. The doctor who bled you, applied cupping, gave you mercury, raised blisters on your skin. That doctor looked like he was doing something. He looked competent. So the entire profession got pulled, century after century, toward more aggressive intervention. Not out of cruelty, out of incentive. And here's the cruel detail. In a lot of places, the people who cared for the poor, the midwives, the folk healers, the ones with no diploma, actually got better outcomes. Not because they knew more, because they did less. And doing less in that world was almost always the better choice. And now comes the twist nobody expects. Medicine wasn't saved by a drug or by some brilliant discovery about the human body. It was saved by something far more boring: counting. The 1830s, in Paris, a doctor named Pierre Louis does something nobody had really done before. He takes patients with the same illness. He bleeds some of them. He doesn't bleed the others. And he simply writes down how many survive in each group. The numbers showed no benefit. That's it. No microscope, No heroic breakthrough, just a table. A few years later in Vienna, another doctor notices something disturbing. Women giving birth in the doctor's ward were dying at a far higher rate than the women in the midwives' ward. The difference? The doctors were coming straight from the dissection rooms, without washing their hands. He orders them to wash. The deaths collapse, and his colleagues ridicule him, because the idea that the doctor was the one carrying death was too unbearable to accept. Some medical historians like to play with a question. At what exact point did going to the doctor become, on average, better than staying home? And the estimate usually lands somewhere around the beginning of the 20th century. Sit with that for a second. That's barely 100 and some years, out of a history that runs into the thousands. Everything you associate with the word medicine, the test that finds it, the drug that cures it, the surgery that saves you, all of it is astonishingly new, practically just invented. And the most powerful thing we discovered along that road wasn't a treatment, it was a habit. Testing whether our own certainty survives being counted. Because the problem was never a lack of intelligence. Those doctors were brilliant. The problem was having an explanation that was too good. So neat, so convincing, that nobody felt the need to check. And that's the part that gives you chills. Because nobody in any of those generations woke up thinking, today I'm going to follow an idea that's wrong. They woke up thinking exactly what you and I wake up thinking, that we know how the world works.